Welcome to Pray for Rain. I am your host, Jack Willis. I want to pitch you a movie. Camera enters on a shitty diner late at night, rain pouring down. On his third cup of coffee is a detective, mid-50s, on the wrong side of every decision he's ever made. Divorced, daughter won't return his phone calls. He drinks alone in an empty apartment, couldn't be bothered to unpack. His partner's dead, and he was there. If only he'd have gone in first, then Ramirez would still be alive. And then one day a body turns up, and the DNA matches the one case he could never solve. The one that's haunted him for 20 years. The department wants him gone, and the new captain doesn't trust him. But there's a detail on the body only he could recognize. Rain on the windshield, whiskey in the glove box, and a killer toying with justice. Christian Bale in Fixation, a film by Aaron Sorkin. That's the movie, and you've basically already seen it. You know that the estranged daughter gets a scene near the end, and that the killer just goads the detective by talking about his dead partner. But it doesn't matter. I'd watch that movie 10 out of 10 times, and I'd argue that a lot of people would as well. But we really don't get a lot of these movies anymore, because Hollywood has become obsessed with novelty and subversion. Most movies now need some algorithmically produced cross-genre element, or they think that they have to subvert our expectations. And I'd argue that a trope told with some conviction beats a formally novel but spiritually dead movie every time. The trope is not the problem, because humanity is a trope. We are an unending cycle of the same eternal stories and situations. I don't know what it looks like in these boardrooms when they're pitching movies, but in my mind, it's some douchebag saying, picture this. And then he tells them about a superhero movie we've seen 100 times, but slips in, but this isn't your grandma's superhero, and proceeds to explain how our protagonist is actually the anti-hero who doesn't follow the typical arc. Or the other pitch we see everywhere now is the cross-genre surrealism thing. Picture this. A cabal of tech billionaires hunts DoorDash workers for sport on their private island, which reads as totally novel on paper, but is just a husk of a story with no substance other than the fact that it hasn't been done before. They're so concerned with having a Mad Lib style of description to convince you that it's great. It's just advertising its own significance without any character or hero that we can grab onto. And I called this the A24ification of movies a while back, and I stand by it. Though I will say I am a fan of A24. They're one of the few studios who's trying to put out good movies right now, even if they can sometimes inspire some crappy surrealist clones. But just think about all of the movies that come out now that are basically agnostic as to their characters. The psychological situation matters more than any single person in it. They're so just concept and ideology driven that it doesn't matter who the protagonist is, because the movie isn't about that. It's about the conceit. It's about whatever crazy situation that they have concocted to drop a perfectly ethnically diverse cast into. Take the movie The Menu. I did not like that movie very much. It sells you entirely on the premise. Guests go to this remote island where a celebrity chef is serving his final meal, but there's a twist. They are the final meal, or something like that. That's the whole pitch. But if you ask, who this movie is about, you kind of come up with a blank. There's no person in it, just a situation and a cast that's being dropped into it. Swap every character and actor and nothing really changes, because the conceit of that movie is the whole star, and the characters are kind of this afterthought. Now, some of you might be thinking, what do you mean Hollywood only puts out novel stuff? It's all sequels and reboots. And yes, that is also a major problem. It's Marvel and Disney live action all the way down. But I'm talking about the other side of this assembly line, the movies that are already attached or aren't already attached to some franchise. I'm essentially talking about the tropes that they are afraid to make anymore. And we need some tropes and time-tested frameworks because they are durable forms of storytelling. Something about them works as this load-bearing device. When we watch a movie about an obsessive alcoholic detective, we know on some level that this movie is going to be about justice, or a movie where The mentor dies before the student or the Padawan can face his final test. We know it's about growing up and facing life on your own. It's about how you tell those beats inside of the framework that makes it compelling. Because using a trope or some tired story structure isn't a promise that the movie is going to be good. Plenty of alcoholic detective movies are dog shit. Have you ever seen The Snowman? That is the one where Michael Fassbender's detective character is literally named Harry Hole. The trope can give the story some scaffolding, and then the writing and the acting and the casting will actually determine whether it's worth watching. So predictable and wonderful are not opposites. Just because you can guess the ending doesn't mean that the story isn't worth telling. Shakespeare told some very old stories, but just made them feel very alive. And if you take one of the most highly rated movies of all time, at least on IMDb, the preferred rating website, The Shawshank Redemption is maybe the highest rated of all time, I think. And it's not novel in a profound sense. It's about wrongful conviction and a prison break, but it's so good. And it's just about friendship and the old hope endures story. It is sappy and it is sincere, and the writing is incredible, and everyone loves it. It's not novel, but it is original. And there's a distinction worth drawing here because we've collapsed two different things into one word. Novelty is when the surface elements of a story have never been arranged in quite that way. Originality is when someone makes an old human truth feel newly seen. They come apart completely. A bizarre, unprecedented premise can be totally hollow and without substance. The Glass Onion. And the oldest story imaginable can still have profound draw. I mean, the Odyssey came out recently, and it's maybe the biggest box office event of the year. I'm not totally sure. It's not anything anybody hasn't heard of, really. It's probably the oldest story in the Western canon, and yet there's something in the air of a scene in a Christopher Nolan movie that just rattles the soul. That's so well done. A novel concept can absolutely make for a good movie. If you take the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that was a genuinely strange premise with some real perception about human love and how people actually work. But unless a movie has strong fundamentals underneath it, some real perception about how people actually are, it just comes off as spiteful and hollow. I'm looking at you, Mickey 17. The other side of this shitty coin of modern filmmaking is the weird obsession with subversion. It's now become orthodoxy that movies have to subvert our expectations instead of meeting them. It was cool and fun when the Guardians of the Galaxy did it for the first time when that first came out, but now it is just totally part of the starter kit where we're denied every ending, and these directors are just getting hard-ons knowing that the climax will land on some ironic comedic beat instead of the thing that we actually came for. Which means that rebellion is now the formula. Ironically, subversion has become the most predictable thing in movies. You can just feel the deconstruction coming before you even see the plot. I mean, Game of Thrones spent the better part of a decade setting up every payoff and then just torched them in the final season for the sake of surprise. They'd rather shock us than satisfy us. The Night King, same thing. He was built up for like that entire show and then dead halfway through the last season so they could pivot to some twist that nobody really wanted. That is the whole disease. Subversion valued over the story that it is subverting. So conversely, it's rock and roll to be normie now, to just tell some basic story of a traditional hero arc is actually an act of rebellion. And I think if you took the temperature of our culture based off of the movies that we put out right now, you probably correctly diagnose us as cynical. And I don't necessarily think that filmmakers are consciously trying to burn down every value that we have. It's probably subtler than that, or maybe more of an aesthetic thing. But the modern movie intelligentsia just treats suspicion as greatness, suspicion of everything, which has a bit of a postmodern drumbeat to it. But movies get treated as serious for tearing things down, not telling the story well. The hero is actually just a fraud. Oh, yeah, this institution is just secretly monstrous. And any sincere moment has to get interrupted by a joke before it can land. So many of these movies share a similar milieu. They share the same sense that everything that we traditionally value is just suspect, and it's the film's job to reveal it. And I'm not going to pretend I know what's in a lot of these filmmakers' heads, but because maybe some of this is just the house style that they came up in, that they are repeating. But whatever the cause, the film acts like it's embarrassing to be sincere. And if your whole raison d'etre is to be some ideological teardown, then you can't really be critiqued, because your whole movie, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about the story. It was about questioning traditional notions of insert whatever cause du jour that you want. Tear down the fourth wall, and then the audience is aware of itself, and then just tear down every single wall after that. Just tear it all down. And I'm not asking for a wartime propaganda movie where, Glenn Powell is mowing down Iranians in the streets. I'm saying that if we only ever deconstruct, you eventually kill the turtle that we're standing on. You leave everyone with nowhere to stand. And another sad casualty of the modern streaming industrial complex is the collapse of the mid-budget drama. And I miss it so badly. So many of these just disappeared from theaters and release schedules. Think about movies like LA Confidential, Gone Baby Gone, The Zodiac, Michael Clayton. These were just really serious movies with no wink to the audience, just incredible writing and casting, adult characters making consequential decisions with finite stakes and real dialogue. Nobody had to save existence itself. The fate of the universe did not hinge on the decisions of this protagonist. And if you haven't seen it, watch Michael Clayton. It is fucking incredible. Tony Gilroy was the writer there, and he's the same guy that did Andor, the other bright light in modern streaming. And I feel like we've all kind of been poisoned a little bit, honestly, because if you go back and watch some of the trailers for some of these older, mid-budget drama movies, they feel a little corny. It's the scratchy voice narrator walking you through the drama, a man against all odds, or a corrupt police force. But these weren't tentpole movies designed to guarantee some spin-off, and they weren't mind-bending cultural critiques announcing that the world is some kind of dystopia. They were serious movies with stakes and great dialogue. That's it. No multiverse, no twist that rearranges reality. Human-scale movies. And when I am king, they will be part of the state media lineup. And there's a movie that I've watched maybe more than any other movie, which is a fairly simple one. It's about freedom and sacrifice in a truly heroic disregard for historical accuracy. And that movie is Braveheart, a film only possible through the sociopathic and deranged genius of Mel Gibson. And I'd argue that this movie is irresistible to men. We are just moths to a flame, and we just don't get Bravehearts anymore. We don't get the serious action dramas and period pieces built to inspire. Netflix did put out The King not that long ago with Chalamet, and that was a good movie. But I feel like Braveheart is just different because it cast aside every societal expectation, narrative convention, and factual truth for the cold, hard hero's journey and the adrenaline of pre-battle speeches. That's what I want. That's what many viewers and men want. And if they say differently, I think that they are performing. I don't want a multiverse where nobody actually ever dies. I don't want the hero and the villain sharing some quippy little moment at the climax. I want psychopaths making movies designed to make us unapologetically feel something. And I suspect that I'm not the only person. So yes, give me the divorced detective in the diner. Give me the dead partner, the captain who wants his badge, and the case that never stopped haunting him. I know exactly what that kind of movie is, and that's why I'd be there on opening night. I don't need a story that no human being has ever imagined. I need an old story told by someone who still believes it matters. That's it for me today, so thank you for hanging out with me, and until next time, I am praying